This is All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation. All Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Let's have a live look at Bitcoin right now. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index currently trading at $60,833. Bitcoin is sliding down about almost 4% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
All right, so there's a lot going on in this chart, but bear with me here. There's a lot of short-term profit taking going on today. But if we zoom out, we can see a bit more detail. So the price of Bitcoin is there in the gray. But while Bitcoin's adjusted spent output profit ratio is there in blue, and it's the SOPR as compiled by Glassnode. It measures the profitability of spent Bitcoin while filtering out short-term trading. You can see in early January max distribution, the highest levels of spent profit when Bitcoin was on its way towards $60,000 levels. Then when it reached record-breaking levels, there was sustained profit-taking. Traders capitulated in June and July when Bitcoin retreated to about $30,000, and now that BTC is back to all-time highs, we are seeing baseline activity, meaning a mild spending and some profit-taking. And what we want to note is that profit-taking since July has remained significantly lower than during Bitcoin's rally from January to May, signaling that holders may believe in the continuation of a longer-term bull cycle. Joining us now to discuss Bitcoin price and more is Sam Trabucco, CEO of Alameda Research, one of the crypto landscape's trading behemoths, booking a $1 billion profit last year, according to Forums. Hello there, Sam. Thanks for joining us. So taking a look at Bitcoin and the crypto markets at large, we see a bit of a pullback. What's your outlook?
And for the past couple of weeks, the narrative's kind of been there was a lot of rallying into the ProShares ETF launching, and since then, Bitcoin reached an all-time high last week or whatever, around 67K, and it's been it sold off a bit. Now it's kind of just been bouncing between 60 and 63 or something.
Do you see this as short-term or perhaps something deeper, lower lows in the coming weeks?
So I think it was predictable that we were gonna bounce off the 67K all-time high thing. There was a lot of a big trade we know a bunch of people were doing was get really long until there's an ETF and then sort of just take profit from that. And we know that there are various large firms who have said they did this. So it's kind of predictable that that's going to happen. I don't really have any strong predictions going forward. I think that it's all things considered, it's been kind of stable. It's been bouncing around in a 10% range, so it's not TradFi stable. But for Bitcoin, this isn't really shocking volatility or anything. So I don't particularly.
It's quite boring, actually, compared to ETH is hitting all-time highs. We do see all-time highs with Solana as well. Is that what institutions or traders are looking toward to diversify away from Bitcoin?
Potentially, I've seen some pieces of narrative shift from Bitcoin has Bitcoin crushed it. Bitcoin the ETF launched successfully. There isn't an ETF for most of these other coins at this point. And so there's definitely some people who are believing that it's we should be shifting into alts now. Bitcoin was outperforming so much for so long that we should be seeing something else there's something similar in the other parts of the market. And so that's potentially what we're seeing right now. But Solana, for instance, is really outperforming quite a bit. It's number 4 market cap now, which is pretty exciting for people who are invested in the ecosystem.
Right. Where do you see Bitcoin in the next 3 months versus, say, longer term, 6 months?
For a long time, Alameda did have pretty strong beliefs that crypto is probably largely undervalued, and Bitcoin, of course, is the stand-in for crypto for a lot of people. If crypto is going to go up, Bitcoin's certainly going to go up. It's gotten it's gotten a little bit less clear to us. The regulatory questions are very active right now. As we speak, there's a important lawsuit going on in Florida. The U.S. regulators are like have been talking a lot about stablecoins recently, we should expect the U.S. regulators and also regulators elsewhere to keep talking about crypto, which like on some level is quite exciting. Like there's this sort of lends legitimacy to the asset class in general, but like there's certainly like good versions of how this will go and bad versions, and so. I think a lot of the longer term price movement of like both Bitcoin and more generally is going to depend super strongly on how these conversations go, what the laws are going forward. And yeah, so Alameda's watching these things very carefully. And I'm sure you
mentioned there was an important case in Florida. I wonder which one you're talking about.
I'm at the Kleiman case discussing who Satoshi is.
And do you think that's a risk to the markets that if we do find out who Satoshi is, or at least who controls the keys to these over 1 million Bitcoins, that it could move markets?
Yeah, so potentially. Like on some level, this is the kind of thing that I sort of expect to be priced in by at least like some fraction of the market, and therefore I'm not saying I believe this, but let's pretend that if it turns out that Wright has to turn over some fraction of these Bitcoins, then like we should expect them to get sold, which I'm not saying I do believe. But if the market believed that, then like you'd expect some sell-off if that were to happen. But yeah, so it definitely could move things. I'm not really expecting anything directional though.
Any reaction to the Fed's decision to start tapering this month their unprecedented bond buying programs? Any impact? What is the impact to the markets you foresee?
I mean, like, as far as like what it's going to do to the crypto market specifically, I don't really see anything that should predictably happen, at least not directionally. Again, this is the kind of thing where the people who like sort of understand these markets have been pricing something like this in for a while, at least some probability of it happening. And so yes, while it is like certainly an update that like the specifics of what the Fed is doing, it's not something that's like outside the realm of possibility a priori, and so I think the markets were like largely getting it right beforehand.
Yeah, you also talked about regulatory environments, and I know you're based in Hong Kong. Any I guess motivation or desire to move elsewhere, like say Bahamas?
It's certain like Alameda is certainly like a pragmatic company for the most part. We're willing to do whatever we think is right, like just in terms of like generating expected returns. And avoiding various risks and whatnot. And so we're certainly not like tied to any one place. If it becomes correct to move to a different place, then we will. For now, Alameda's most of Alameda's operations are still based in Hong Kong, but we'll see what happens going forward.
Okay, and I say that obviously because your co-CEO was Sam Bankman-Fried. He's moved his operations from at FTX from Hong Kong to the Bahamas, and since he stepped away from Alameda Research, you have a new co-CEO, Caroline Ellison. Congratulations, by the way, on formalizing it. But from what I understand, Sam has not been much involved with Alameda since going on to FTX, or is he? Is he still involved with Alameda?
He's really not involved at all in the day-to-day operations of Alameda. Caroline and I have been leading the charge there for quite some time. And yeah, the announcement a few months ago was really just to formalize what has been true for quite some time.
Okay. And I also noticed Alameda has been making some moves. You plunked in some money into Singapore-based trading platform AscendX with their $50 million raise. You contributed to that. Alameda also leading a $21 million funding round in gaming studio Faraway. So what is your investment thesis with these moves? And I know you're into seizing opportunities. So what is your investment thesis?
Sure. This isn't exactly like what we think moving forward, but this stepping back a bit, like a few years ago. For the most part, if you if you invested in a crypto project a few years ago, you did very well. So like this is what some people will describe as spray and pray as a strategy. That is not exactly our strategy, to be clear. But for a long time, it was basically correct that you should be investing in every crypto project. At this point, we still think that there is like a ton of money to be made in investing in like the best like 30% of crypto projects or something like that. And yeah, so the ones that you'll hear announcements of us making investments in are basically the ones where we think the team is quite good. The ones you mentioned in specific, we think that they've done great work already. We think that their teams are quite impressive and have the potential to do a ton more great work. And so that's basically what our thesis is. Like, we want to be investing in the best teams in this industry that is like still has some probability of like blowing up even more than it already has.
Awesome. Sam, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your insights. Always a pleasure. That was Alameda Research CEO Sam Trabucco. Coming up, Bitcoin's potential to help the unbanked and disenfranchised is put to the test with the Navajo Nation, the largest land territory retained by a Native American tribe in the U.S. Welcome back. Ether is outperforming Bitcoin, breaking September highs, and should rally as high as 49.51 with little to no resistance, according to market strategy firm FS Insight. And that further relative gains for Ether over Bitcoin still look to continue short term. FS Insight expects Bitcoin's breakout to new weekly highs to lead to a retest of the October peak near $67,000. Meanwhile, Craig Wright taking the stand today after early Bitcoin developer Gavin Andreessen testified, saying he was bamboozled into believing Wright was Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin. The trial between Craig Wright versus David Kleiman estate is being closely watched for details on Wright's claims, and at stake are a fortune of over 1 million Bitcoins, now worth about $68 million. And finally, the Navajo Nation is the largest Native American reservation in the United States. It's also one of the poorest communities in the country, following a history of exploitation by the federal government. But now the Navajo Nation is turning to Bitcoin mining to turn things around.
At first glance, there's little connection between the Navajo Nation, the largest Native American reservation, and Bitcoin. But a quick look at the numbers show how the current financial system hasn't played in the Navajo's favor, something Bitcoin attempts to solve for everyone. 48% of Navajo are unemployed, 40% don't have running water, 32% live off the grid, while 1 in 3 Navajo live below the poverty line.
We're considered like an energy colony. We're naturally resource rich, but the people still don't really benefit from that. Other people have benefited.
Huge supplies of untapped energy live under the desert rock. But the world is moving on from coal, leaving the Navajo the owners of multiple decommissioned power plants, strip mines, and cases of black lung. And then there's the banking side of the story. The Navajo and the U.S. financial sector have a complicated history, perhaps best exhibited by the 2019 case between the Navajo Nation and Wells Fargo. Here, the Navajo sued and won against the banking giant for predatory practices committed against its Navajo clients.
They're always trying to exploit the people out of their money. And sometimes I think like, okay, these are business opportunities, but it's also perpetuating like this poverty in our communities. We're a nation working with the nation of United States, but they will not recognize that sovereign to sovereign agreement when it comes to US currency, so they want complete control.
All right, that was a report from Compass Mining Editorial Director and co-host of CoinDesk's The Hash, Will Foxley, who joins me now. He went down to investigate there. All right, hello, Will. Thanks for what an excellent report. So you guys went down to Navajo Nation, which is over 17,000 acres of land over portions of Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico. They're building Bitcoin data centers. How did you hear about it first, and what inspired you to go down there in the first place?
Yeah, there's actually a decent amount of mining activity on Indian reservations, but most people are just unaware of it. Most people are unaware of Bitcoin mining in general, but a lot of cities around the US already have Bitcoin mines in their location. The reason I went down there is because this story spoke to me on a personal level. I'm from Colorado. I remember driving down to the Navajo Nation, driving through it to California growing up to visit family. And I remember just being struck as a little kid by the poverty and the lack of opportunity a lot of people down there had. Being a 10-year-old kid, I'd see other 10-year-old kids and said They have a different life than I do. And that story really stuck with me. And then I heard an opportunity about there being a Bitcoin mine down there, and that these people, these Navajo, are looking for an opportunity to change what's the current situation they have, which is that of impoverishment from U.S. government policy. And so I grabbed onto that story and ran with it and created this.
What do you hope that this report will accomplish?
My goal for this is to bring greater awareness to the Navajo people themselves. As I kind of laid out in the documentary there, they don't have the opportunities or the chances the nominal American has. Unemployment is chronic, and it has been for decades. Utilities, most people don't have utilities. A third of all Navajo don't have running water in their houses in 2021. They don't have running water. And that's real exploitation. And I think Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin in general can be a solution and an answer to a lot of the problems that the Navajo people are facing. So I wanted to bring greater awareness to the Navajo people's struggles and the tasks and the actions they're taking to overcome that natively. It's not about what Americans can do for them. It's what the Navajo are doing for themselves through Bitcoin.
So does Bitcoin fix this? I mean, I guess that's the question. But likely not, because exploitation is systemic over hundreds of years of generational abuse against their community and culture. But I guess what could the potential of Bitcoin bring to this community?
No, I'll be first and foremost and say Bitcoin is no messiah here. It doesn't solve every problem, but it does solve two very specific problems that the Navajo have faced over the last 2 centuries, and that's on energy and finance. On energy, the Navajo have a lot of energy natively on their reservation. That would be coal and uranium. Los Angeles, Phoenix, Santa Fe, Las Vegas, all of those cities were powered by coal from Navajo Nation over the last 100 years. It was extracted from the nation, brought up, mined, sent to these big cities. And those cities have lights powered because of Navajo coal. All the while, a third of all Navajo don't have electricity running in their houses. On the finance side, same story. Navajo people can't invest in a bank. They can't operate with a lot of the financial institutions that a lot of Americans take for granted just because of how the system is set up between the U.S. government and the Navajo government. What Bitcoin does is it steps in and says, hey, you can use that energy on your reservation for something that's profitable. And it also brings exposure to a new banking system with Bitcoin. The Navajo people are going to see a physical Bitcoin presence on their reservation, whereas before, there's not that many banking entities on Navajo Nation, and the Navajo people remain a very unbanked people.
Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating story, Will. Folks should go see it. I saw it on YouTube just a while ago. Thank you so much for joining us, Will, and taking us through this report. Appreciate your time. That was Compass Mining Editorial Director Will Foxley. And that's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and we'll do it all over again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us tomorrow morning as well at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover. You're watching CoinDesk TV.